Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Political Vigilante. I'm here with another progressive candidate running in the great state of California. I'm here with Roza Calderon, who is running for which district? Remind us.
California's 4th Congressional District against Tom McClintock.
Ah, getting some big corporate money, Tom is, right?
Right, yes.
You're probably the third or fourth progressive candidate I've interviewed in the last month, and I'm always intrigued by what brought you into running.
So for me, the story is a little bit different. You know, my background is in activism, and locally here, I think this is one of the oldest districts in California, if not even the nation. It's really hard to gain the engagement that's needed to really push forward any policy or any agendas. So when all of this started happening with Trump, it was like the community who had seen me in action asked me to run. So I had held a forum so that we could nominate people to run at the local level. I think that building the bench is absolutely paramount into actually getting ourselves to a better position in the next election. And to my surprise, the people who showed up actually showed up to ask me to run. And it was shocking. But, you know, it took me a few months to say yes. And the reason why it took me some time is because I am the average Joe. I have to figure out who's going to be paying for the bills while I'm campaigning. To run against someone like McClintock, you need to run a 1-year full-on head first kind of campaign, because you need to gain that name recognition against Coke industry money. You know, he's funded by Coke industry. He's funded by a plethora of special interests, and he has name recognition. He's been a congressperson, and even on the California side, he was in Congress in our legislative body here for 30 plus years. So he's got a long list of things under his belt, but not a lot of accomplishments.
Yeah, I'm sure he's got a lot of nice cash checks from giant corporate donors. So I'm looking at your website here, which is electroza.org. And first, I kind of want to go through what is your platform? What makes you different than a corporate Democrat?
You know, so what kind of sets us apart from corporate Dems is obviously that we're not taking any corporate donations and no special interest lobbying money. That is a big one. So the minute you tell the Democratic Party that you're going to be running the campaign that you feel is ethical and that you refuse to take that corporate money and that lobbying money, they want to have nothing to do with you, because you are not going to be feeding their political machine, their money-making machine. And so that's one of the things that sets us all apart. On my platform, the other thing I'm fighting for is obviously, you know, justice for healthcare reform, justice for criminal justice reform. I want education justice. I want to make sure that people, their abilities to succeed are not limited by the zip code that they were born into. I came to the U.S. as a refugee as well. I want to fight for immigration justice. So it really comes down to fighting for the little guy. We have absolutely zero representation in Congress right now. And I could say that for almost every single level of government.
Now, you say that you came to this country as a refugee. You told me before we started the interview that you voted for yourself and you brought your mother with you, who was a refugee. So tell me what coming to this country was like and where you came from and why.
Well, I came from a shithole country known as El Salvador. At least that's the claim to fame that we have now. I kid you not, every single time I used to tell people I was from El Salvador, their question was, where is that? But now we actually have some name recognition for our tiny little country. And but my mom actually came to the U.S. as a refugee soon after, actually during the Civil War of El Salvador. So in Central America, there were a few civil wars that were going on. A lot of military governments that were being funded and pushed by the American government at the time. After an assassination attempt on my mother's life, she decided to flee to the United States. So she was a single parent of 2 young girls, myself and my older sister. She left us behind. She knew that her only chance to actually giving us an opportunity for a future was to migrate to the U.S. So she migrated to the United States on foot, fleeing the horrors that were happening in El Salvador, and was able to gain access to file for political asylum when she reached the border. And she's one of the very, very few who were able to get through. So, today, for her to be able to come with me to the elections office in this county as a citizen, as her daughter who's a citizen, who's running for U.S. Congress, it brings her right back to that moment where she was pleading in desperation to get through that border, to be able to give my sister and I an opportunity to a brighter future.
Well, that's very impressive. And so I'm looking here at the endorsements that you received. Dolores Huerta, the co-founder of the United Farm Workers Union, she worked with Cesar Chavez, for anybody watching that didn't know this. Susan Sarandon, who, wait a minute now, I thought, isn't she a Kremlin puppet? I thought she was isn't she working with Jill Stein and Putin to...
Yes, absolutely. It's so crazy that people just absolutely neglect all the work that she has done as an activist and try to pin her down as somebody who is completely at fault for Hillary losing, neglecting all the other things that made a Trump presidency possible.
It shows you how insane the times are. That this woman, actress, activist, very outspoken, is now demonized by women who call themselves feminists. It is insane to me. It just shows you the craziness of the Clinton and the DNCs. They cheated their primary. They, blocked out 26 million independent voters. And then all these people that voted for Bernie, they said, shut up. You lost, and you better vote for her. You better be with her. Otherwise, Trump is your fault, and you must hate women.
Absolutely.
It's a form of insanity.
Yes, and I'm hearing that right now. We are at our last push before the primary on Tuesday. We are calling voters, and it seems since the success that we saw in March in Texas, they have been working extra hard to make sure that progressives are definitely not going to get through. And in my race, it has been absolutely no different. I've been branded the Bernie in the race. Anybody who votes for Roza, it's a vote from McClintock. They're talking about us being the divisive group. Anybody who has a progressive agenda, regardless if you got the California Democratic endorsement, as it's happened in Tuamar, they are pushing their own candidates. The DNC is coming in with their own candidates, supported by Hoyer, who, as we heard the audio tape from Colorado, asking progressive candidates to step down because it's not our turn now, but it'll never be our turn. And it's only because, like I said, we're not in the business of making money for the party. And one of the beauties of not getting the endorsement from the party, and maybe not even getting the nomination once I get through the primary, will be that I am not forced by contract to spend 50% of my time in Congress making fundraising phone calls for the party. And I'm completely okay with that.
Wait a minute. So if you get elected Congress, you're not going to be drumming up money for the DNC? You're going to actually be serving the constituents that voted you into office?
It's crazy. I know. It's something that I've been thinking about. It's ludicrous that I am committed to working 100% of the time that I'm in office for the people that got me into office. But that's something that needs to be said, and it needs to be just acknowledged. I think the highest number is about 70% of the time, these Congress people are on the phones raising money for their next election or for their party rather than working for you.
Wow. And if anyone out there is wondering, watching the show, why Congress so does nothing, there you go, because they're not serving you and me. They're serving their corporate overlords. So let me ask you this. In California, for those who don't know, is a open primary. It's a top two, right? That gets you into the general. The election is June 5th, which happens to be the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Bobby Kennedy. Who was running, he helped, if you watch the documentary Bobby Kennedy for President on Netflix, you see he helped Cesar Chavez, stopped his hunger strike, helped him get a lot of rights. And when he and Dr. King wanted to help poor people, oh, weird, they got a bullet in their head. So what are you going to do if you get elected? How are you going to serve the people of the Congressional 4th in California?
So my goal has been ultimately, if there's one thing that I can do to help the people of this district and just the people of the nation entirely, is to get money out of politics. That's going to be my number one goal, because until that is done, everything else right now, arguing back and forth with Trump supporters about immigration, talking about income inequality, all of those things are essentially moot points until we get money out of politics. So I will be pushing for politically funded campaigns. I'm going to be pushing to overturn Citizens United, and also make legal corruption absolutely illegal, making sure that politicians are not allowed to receive any contributions from special interest lobbyists. And that is something that is paramount to really move forward in this nation. Once we get that done, of course, I'm always going to continue fighting for equity in education. I'm going to be fighting for single-payer healthcare through Medicare expansion for all. And I'm going to also be fighting for environmental justice. My background is as a geoscientist, so I know the struggles that we're going through right now when it comes to the environment, not just nationwide, but internationally. This is the one issue that doesn't have a party structure. So making sure that we tackle the issue here in California, where we have the bark beetle infestation that's killed over 130 million pines. It's not a California issue either. It's in Washington, it's in Oregon, it's in Arizona, it's in Colorado, it's in Canada. I mean, so those are the things that need to be highlighted. Making sure that we have quality jobs and job security, which has become so scarce in the United States today. This just freezing of jobs and freezing of wages that do not allow for upward mobility. Those are the things that I'm going to be fighting for in Congress.
Okay, so let's, I want to talk about the environment a little bit. First of all, what specific issues within your district would you mentioned the bark beetle. If you could expand on that just a little bit for people who don't understand. How is a bark beetle infestation an environmental issue? And then what legislation would you implement while you're in Congress?
So it's not just an environmental issue. When it comes to the bark beetle, this actually affects our economy, it affects our health, it affects jobs, it affects so many things. I call it a snowball effect of problems. The bark beetle is a tiny, tiny little insect that it's probably the size of the grain of rice, but they come in and hover over trees that are already a little bit weak. And as you know, with the drought that we've had in California, there's been millions of trees that are weak. So it's allowed for the bark beetle to really flourish in this area. We have seen generations of bark beetle because of our endless summers that are going on here. And so one of the things that has happened is that they've been able to essentially kill the trees, the pines in particular, from the bottom up and from the outside in. And what's happening is that now we have 130 million dead trees. That is just a fire hazard. The other thing is that we've seen California up in flames last year. You know, this was after Governor Brown called off the drought, but we are not out of the drought yet. I mean, it's going to take decades to recover from the drought that we just saw. It was almost a decades-long drought. And that also stopped the funding to tackle this problem, which means treating the trees, doing selective logging where we're going to be removing the trees that are hazardous or trimming the trees, treating them. And all that funding has essentially ended. And so we have multi-agencies working on this same project, but at a very small scale now, where we're not working fast enough to really make a dent in the problem. The other problem that's coming from this is, like I said, fire hazard. Homes are being uninsured by huge insurance companies. Every single one of the 10 counties in my district is a high-risk fire county. So insurance companies are coming in. They are deeming your house uninsurable. They're giving you 90 days to quit. And they're doing this by means of doing remote sensing or satellite imagery, essentially, where they look at your defensible space. And if it has not been cleared, your policy gets canceled. If you want to retain your policy, you can pay upwards to 2, 3, or 4 times what you were paying before. And these are areas that have very low amount of jobs. They have high unemployment rates, sometimes double the national unemployment rates. And so people are not able to keep their insurances. So what happens when a fire pushes through, right? The fire is not going to give a damn if you voted Democrat or Republican. It's going to burn down your house. And when that happens and you cannot rebuild because this insurance is stopping you from rebuilding your home, it's not allowing your claims to have a payout, then you're left to your own means. So what's happened outside of that? We have had the cannabis industry come and do cash offers for land in many of these places. It's brought in a new industry, a new tax that's going to be able to help with schools and supporting some of the social programs, but it has not been very well received because it's also caused a housing shortage. It's also caused a migrant community that used to work on the orchards and the vineyards now working for the cannabis industry. So there's that going on. I mean, the problems just go on and on and on and on, and it all starts if we could just start treating that bark beetle infested tree.
Okay. What other main issues or pieces of legislation would you implement if you become elected?
So with that being said, I would, number one, ask for a national emergency to be called. So we need FEMA money. We need boots on the ground. We could get people back to work to tackle this issue for the bark beetle. We could provide a multi-agency effort so that we are all working together in tackling this problem. So that would be one of the legislation that I would push. Unfortunately, right now, the congressperson that we have, he does not even believe in science. He doesn't believe in climate science. He goes back to, yes, I know, eyes wide open for that one. He has absolutely no concern for actual data. He says that this is all made up, that if you look back at historical texts, that this has been going on for ages. And that's really unfortunate because this district covers some of the most beautiful places in the world. You were talking about Lake Tahoe, Kings Canyon National Park, and the crown jewel, which is Yosemite National Park. We also have the sequoia giant trees. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful area. Millions and millions of dollars come in for tourism. This is how the economy is sustained in that region. We are talking about people coming from all over the world to see Half Dome. And we have a congressman who has proposed allowing us to manage our forests the way that lumber companies manage their forest farms, their tree farms, which means clear cutting. He's talked about allowing drilling in our backyard, and he is completely okay with saying that about the Yosemite Valley. And that is something that needs to be a concern, not just for people in this district, not just for people in California, but people throughout the nation and in the world.
Yeah, I say that a lot to people that view the show. When they ask, like, how can I get involved? I say, this is why you should back progressive candidates, even in local races or small races, even in a municipal race or your school board or whatever, because this is what these local entrenched corporate politicians do. They sell things off they get money from the oil industry and whatever else. And then these beautiful national parks. I've driven through Yosemite. As a comedian, I've worked in Lake Tahoe since 2001. It's one of the more beautiful places in North America. And I'm well aware of the bark beetle and the fact that the tourism is a big part of the revenue. And if you're drilling and you've clear cut everything, or there's constant wildfires or all of the above, there's no tourism money. So it's really not helping people's jobs. They always try to, the people that get money from the carbon fuel industry always try to say that environmentalists hurt job growth when it's completely incorrect. It's saving the environment actually would create more jobs.
Absolutely. That would be my goal. And I also believe in a jobs guarantee program. Everywhere you go, we have complaints about all the things that could be done to improve our roads, to improve our structures, to improve the quality of life. Those are jobs in the making, waiting to be made, waiting to be funded. That would also pull away from this idea that, nobody wants to work, that everybody wants to live off the government. That is not true. If you offer people a job, I guarantee you that people will show up and work, because most Americans like to earn an honest living, and we have to be able to provide that. So to be honest with you, if so many people in my district depend on any type of social service, it's because of the failures of someone like Tom McClintock, who has not done his job in providing work for our region.
Okay, so Roza, in closing here, how can people, aside from the obvious, which is if you live in your district, vote by Tuesday, June 5th, but what else could people do to support you in this final days of your campaign?
So right now, the big place, the huge things that we need help in right now is social media. You know, share our content, like our pages, tell your friends, your neighbors, or anybody that you know who lives in this region of California, who has ever traveled, like you said, to Yosemite or Lake Tahoe, to support our cause by donating or doing just social media shares. But most importantly, right now, we are trying to reach as many homes as possible in this district. And my campaign is only people powered. So we don't have any paid staff. It's all volunteers. We can phone bank from home. You can jump online, go to my website, click on Call Voters, and just start calling constituents of this district, asking them if we have their vote for June 5th, because in November, we will get rid of Tom McClintock.
Well, thank you so much for your time. The website is electroza.org. I will put the link in the show notes below, everybody. So you don't even have to live in this district to support. If you want to support a progressive candidate, as she said, she could use volunteer help that you can do at home. The election is June 5th. And I thank you so much for your time and good luck.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
All right. Have a great day.